the thing I want to talk about today is podcasting, right? Now, this is coming a bit premature, but I want you to start listening to some podcasts straight away, so that's why I'm talking about it now. Just to recap though, by the end of this week now, you should have your blog set up. You should have your Google Plus account set up. You should have added me to a circle. I should have added you back to the circle I've made for this class. So in your Google Plus, you should see that you're in this group. And I don't believe we set you up with Google Analytics. I plan to do that, so we'll sort that out in the next lab. And what I wanted you to do between now and next week is to find out everything you can about blogs and blogging. Okay? I'm going to talk about podcasting today because there's some podcasts I want you to sign up for. The mechanism by which you'll do this will vary depending on whether you're an Apple person or not. If you use iTunes, it's probably the easiest way to do what we want to do. If you're an Android person, there are other things you can use as well. Okay? Now, so what's podcasting? I was hoping to show you that McDonald's ad where there's the two guys, and the guy goes up and says, "What are you listening to?" She says, "Podcasts," and he goes, "Yeah, podcasts. I love their early stuff." I can't find it online, which is surprising actually, because usually these companies never miss an opportunity to put stuff on YouTube. But it's not there, unfortunately. But you've all seen the ad anyway. So lest you fall into the same trap, I'm going to explain to you today what podcasts are. Okay? First thing we need to talk about is RSS. Now, if someone asks you what RSS stands for, they're trying to trick you. Okay? They're trying to see if you're a real nerd or just a muggle who's faking it. Okay? So RSS doesn't actually stand for anything. Some people like to say it stands for real simple syndication, but that was kind of just trying to fit some words onto the thing itself. So it's one of those things, a bit of a nerd shibboleth. You can tell the real nerds from the pretend ones. RSS doesn't stand for anything. Okay? PHP doesn't stand for anything either, by the way. No. So RSS is a technology that was devised to help people keep up to date with, say, a blog. So if you were a pathological Justin Bieber fan, you might have to go to Justin Bieber's blog, 5 times a day, just in case there was some important news that you weren't aware of. And what RSS allows you to do is it allows you to have a special program called an RSS feed reader that would go and check to see if there was any update. This technology was developed, I think, slightly before Twitter. I think if we had no Twitter, everybody would know what RSS means, and all the fans would know the URL for Justin Bieber's RSS feed, because that's where he'd be having his news. But with the advent of things like Twitter, that kind of does part of the job that RSS might have done if we didn't have it. So you mostly see RSS on news sites. So, Sky News, Sky Sports, BBC News, RT News. These news sites would all have news feeds. And that would be a file that would contain maybe the headlines, a short snippet of the story, and a URL for the full story. And you might decide to install an RSS feed reader on your phone, and you might say to it, go check the RTE website every 5 minutes, or go check the Manchester United website every 2 days, or go check the Justin Bieber RSS feed 20 times a day, whatever. You can usually set the frequency and stuff as well. When you're walking around CIT and you see screens that have news headlines, like there's no one over in the admin building typing those in. They just plugged in the RTE News RSS feed. And when RTE updates that, RTE might update that news feed every 15 minutes. The CIT screens might go every 2 hours or something and download that file. And we'll have a look now what those files look like. But typically they contain headlines. A lot of media organizations no longer want press releases from people. So, CNN might say to Apple, listen, don't bother sending us any press releases anymore. Just give us the URL for your RSS feed. We'll follow you. And if there's something we want to, report on, whatever, we'll see it from there. So, you can do a lot with RSS feed. The previous version of the operating system I had on my machine let you put in an RSS feed, and the screensaver would, show the news flashing and blah, blah, blah. No. So an RSS feed would look something like this. This is one I pulled from the RTE website. Now, these were never meant for humans to read, of course. I just, looked at the XML file. And this is from 2012. Okay, so this is from actually the RTE entertainment news, the real news, yeah. So if you look here, it's an XML file. XML is a superset of HTML. So you can see there's lots of taggy type things there. This isn't quite HTML, but it should look familiar to you. So in RSS, you have, obviously the opening tag will tell you it's an RSS file. Then you have a channel. So you might have several channels in the RSS feed. And then in each channel, there's an item. And I highlighted the tags there just so you could see them. So, there's a title tag, a description, the publication date, and then there'd be a link. There's always a link to, say, the full story. So, BBC News, for example, will have an RSS feed. Manchester United might have an RSS feed. So you'd follow the feeds that you're interested in. And it's what we call, it's kind of like push technology, in that you sign up and then the stuff just automatically turns up. So once you signed up to the RTE News RSS feed, the RTE News turns up on your phone. You don't have to keep going back to the site. You might decide, oh, that looks interesting, click on it, and then it'll take you to the website. So RSS feeds came out of blogging. And you'd have a special program called a Newsreader. You'd give it the RSS feed, you'd give it the URL of the RSS feed that you're interested in, and then at regular intervals, it would go check and see if there was an update. So you didn't have to. Now, those intervals might be every 5 minutes, or every month. It could be whatever. If you're a stockbroker, you might have your RSS reader, checking every 30 seconds in case, God forbid, there's some piece of news that's really important that you'd be, half a minute behind everyone else with the news. If you were following the RSS feed for my blog, you might decide to update it every day so that you could see what classes were on that day if you missed a class or something. I'm sure there's an RSS feed from the Mars rover, for example. There's nothing much happening on Mars at the moment. You might decide you'd update that once a week, rocks, more rocks, more rocks, whatever. Okay. So some browsers, a lot of browsers in fact, would have a newsreader built in, but in the early days they were separate applications. And you could download a newsreader app for your phone also. Now, it started to get interesting then when someone said, what if we were to include links to images and other files? So you could, in the RSS feed, you could embed an image. Well, then you could do things like a photo stream. So I've no doubt somewhere there is an RSS feed with the, cat of the day. And you could download automatically, without doing anything, a new cat picture would turn up every day on your machine. I've no doubt there's at least one of those, and there's probably many. There's probably subgenres of cat picture of the day. Okay, let's face it. And so someone said, well, actually, those other files, what if they could be audio files? And so the RSS format was, the syntax was extended so that you include an audio file. So imagine, instead of just downloading the news headline every day or every hour, you could check to see if there was a new audio file to be downloaded. And this gave us then the beginning of podcasting. And a podcast, I suppose, is an RSS feed that has embedded audio files in it that you can download. So what was my definition? So pre-recorded radio programs posted on the internet for download and then playback on a variety of devices. Now, in many respects, that was nothing new. A long, long time ago. In fact, probably, quite possibly, before you were born, I would have downloaded audio files on the internet. Would I? It's 2014. Just about, I'd say. Just about, yeah. So downloading audio files off the internet was nothing new. And playing them back was nothing new. But what makes a podcast different is this subscription model. You say to your newsreader, I'm interested in this podcast. Sign me up for that. And then whenever a new episode becomes available, just download it automatically for me. So it's different from streaming. You can listen to a radio station streaming, and when something is streaming, the bits are basically flying past you and you're watching them as they go past. With podcasting, the file is downloaded and then you have it as a file, and you can copy it onto your MP3 player and listen to it on the bus. And that was a big distinction and a big feature for people in the early days, because it meant you could download your latest and greatest things and then you could listen to them on the subway or on the bus or wherever. And you could do that in places where you didn't have internet access. So it's a bit like, songs that you downloaded. As more and more people have internet access everywhere they go, the distinction between, downloaded stuff and streaming stuff is a bit blurred. And a lot of people now might listen to their podcasts and just stream them when they're at home. So like with my phone now, I have the option of just playing to it and listening to it streaming or downloading it. And it doesn't make a difference to me, but actually I've decided now, because I've switched plans and I've got a very small data package now, but I'm not spending very much, that between home and CIT, I don't have any internet. I turn it off, so I don't use it up. And so that make a big difference to me then, because to listen to stuff I've downloaded beforehand while I was at CIT or at home. So iTunes started supporting podcasting in 2005, and it was a huge success. Apple put money into this because it was another thing people could do on their iPods, sell more iPods. And it was really great because you'd set up the things you were interested in. So you might be interested in, the latest Man United news, or you might be interested in some comedy show, or, the latest news from RTE, whatever. You'd subscribe to these podcasts, and that's all you had to do. And then the next time you hooked up your iPod to the machine, well, while you were doing nothing anyway, as iTunes is open, whenever iTunes is open, it would go have a look and see, is there new episodes to download? If there was, it would download them. You'd have already said just download them, don't ask me. So they'd turn up on your machine. When you connected up your iPod, the episodes you'd already listened to would be taken off. Any new episodes would be loaded. So while your machine was charging, all this could be happening on your iPod. And so the next morning when you got up to go to work, you would have new content on your iPod, automagically. So although technically speaking, all you were doing was going online, download an audio file, copying it to your device so you could play it. What was new and convenient was that all this happened without you doing anything. And so that was hugely successful. And the cool thing then was you didn't need internet access to listen to them. So lots of tablets and phones have all this built in as well now. So without ever connecting up to a machine, you could say to your iPhone, I want you to subscribe to this podcast. And then it'll download them automatically. And you can listen to them. So if you have an iPhone, you'll find the podcast app does all that. And no. So this is pretty much what I just said. Downloading files from the internet wasn't new, but having this happen automatically was great. This led to a renaissance of radio. People had been saying, the internet was going to kill radio, and just before they killed it off, it saved it, because lots of radio programs then could reach a global audience. Excuse me. So let's say, for example, you have you're big into manga, and you go to 96 FM, and you say, look, me and my buddies, we have this great idea for a manga show. Would you broadcast it for us? They'd say, well, there's probably only 5 people in Cork that are interested in that. 3 of them are you, and where the other 2 are. You might go to RTE and say the same thing, and they might say, well, there's 100 people in Ireland now would be interested in that, and 3 of them are you. That's still not enough. But on the planet, or in the English-speaking world anyway, there's enough people that it might actually be worth your while. So while you wouldn't broadcast it on the radio, you could make your radio show and put it on the web, and then people could subscribe to your podcast. Now, so that then has led to a lot of amateur radio shows. A bunch of guys in the garage making a radio program and getting a following online, if they're any good. It was particularly popular in the US because the list of things you can't say on the radio in the US and keep your license is very long. Whereas, for a radio program on the internet, well, you could say whatever you like. You could use dirty words and everything. Okay? So there are 2 kinds of podcasts then. There are the likes of the RTEs and the BBCs and the NPRs and the CNNs who make programming to broadcast it. It's very high quality. And then they chop it up and put it on the web as well for people to download as podcasts. So like the Ray Darcy show, you can download. So if you like the Ray Darcy show, but you think that hour of the morning is an ungodly hour to be up and listening to the radio, you could download the podcast, every day, and it'll be waiting there for you, at 2 o'clock when you wake up. But also there are amateurs making radio programs. So you have the likes of the Dawn and Drew show, which was very popular. And that was so popular then that they were able to get advertising. They were able to make that their main job. So their job then was making this radio program. Now, it's hard to know if your, manga show would be so popular that you would get advertising, but you might be able to make some money. Now, Apple maintains a directory of podcasts. And that's, if you want people to find your show, that's the place to put it. So Google and Microsoft and Yahoo were all sleepwalking through this particular one, and Apple stole that particular corner of the market. So if you want to find a podcast, the iTunes Music Store is the place to go. If you want your podcast to be found, you have to figure out who you have to sleep with at Apple to make that happen, because that's where you want to be. Okay? Now, you can also say to someone, I have this really cool podcast show, and the URL for the RSS feed is this, and then they can type that in manually as well. It's just a link to an XML file in the RSS format. So the iTunes Music Store looks something like that. If we look here, these are the top podcasts for Ireland last week sometime when I got that screenshot. So some things shouldn't surprise you. Some things are a bit surprising. It's all a bit cerebral, actually. You know, well, apart from Ricky Gervais, but even then, that's, you know, fairly interesting comedy. It's interesting that, I guess this second captain's thing here, said he pointing at the screen, is to do with rugby or soccer. I'm not sure. I imagine it's rugby, but I don't know. The Last Word with Matt Cooper is no surprise there. Marion Finucane is no surprise, I guess. Football show and news talk. So these are the things that Irish people, these are the most popular things that Irish people have signed up for. Mark Kermode is a good example. He has, or had or has, I'm not sure, has, I suppose, a film review program on Radio 5. But they also podcast that, and it became very, very popular with people around the world. So he you know, managed to get a huge global following from people who could never listen to Radio 5 live on the radio because it's just in the UK. And so he got an online following there. Okay. Now, there's a difference between podcasting and streaming, like I was saying, and that causes a problem then, there's copyright issues for music. Because if you had a radio show where you could, if you had a radio show that had music in it, right, that had songs in it, like you do, you know, I'm sure Ray D'Arcy plays songs, the podcast of that would have the songs removed for copyright reasons, because if you could download the whole file, well then you could just like cut out Ray D'Arcy and take the songs without paying for them. So typically you don't get the songs in a podcast. Whereas if something was streaming, it's just like being broadcast on the radio. I mean, obviously you could capture it in some way, but they're not giving it to you. They're not handing it over to you. So for the most part, you don't find music in podcasts. Although you do come across some music podcasts. And also some musicians are happy for people to use their music just for exposure. There's a guy called Adam Curry who was one of the first MTV VJs. I say did that with my hands because he used to have big 80s hair. He's done a lot of work with podcasting, and he's developed a website where musicians can submit their songs with all the copyright issues sorted out in advance, so that if you have a podcast and you're looking for a song, you can take it from there and they'd be happy for you to do that. Okay. You can also have video podcasts. Obviously producing video is a more difficult thing to do in your garage than producing a radio show, but the technology is advancing so much that, you know, that's also doable. I mean, you can record quite good video now on an iPhone. Obviously video files take up more space than audio files. Video podcasts are popular, but not as popular as audio. I mean, you're not going to take a video podcast to the gym, you know, and watch it. But depending on what it is, they're popular too. I'm recommending 2 podcasts to you that I think you should listen to, that you should subscribe to if you're taking this module. So one is On the Media, and the other is NPR Technology. So On the Media is a show about the media, but it deals a lot with the web and with data. And NPR Technology is a sort of mixtape from NPR in the US of all the technology bits, all the technology stories from the week. So that's a bit of a mixed bag and a selection box, but a lot of it would be of interest to you as a computing student. I've put links to these on the blog, on my blog. And if we've time, I'm going to show you 2 cool things you can do. You can sort of build up your own list of podcasts. So I'm just going to get connected up there. Just 1 second now if I can connect online. So I'll try this very quickly, if I can get online. So NPR is National Public Radio in the US. Okay. It's still connecting. I wonder how long it would take me to log in here. Oh, seem to be in. Okay. There we go. Okay, not exactly lightning, is it? Okay, so if we go to listen, podcasts, and this allows you to do a very cool thing. It allows you to build up your own custom RSS feed with the things you're interested in. And every time there's a segment on a radio show that involves that topic, it'll get put into this RSS feed. So I might call this NPR Ireland stuff. And I'm going to add here, every time there's a segment on the radio there where they talk about Ireland, it'll go into a list. So these are the last 5 things that the last 5 radio programs they added, are last 5 radio segments that mentioned Ireland. No, it's not super intelligent. Like if you put in apple and they're talking about apple trees, that might turn up there too. You can actually, add and do Boolean and stuff and get a very complex. So look, see Jeff Ireland out as Dolphins GM after 6 seasons. So that's a person called Ireland and not the country. So we might not be so interested in that. Okay, but that's pretty cool. If you're interested in following stuff about Facebook, you might say every time they mention Facebook, which is probably 3 or 4 times a day. So you could just click on this then if you were on your home machine, and it would subscribe in iTunes to that particular podcast for you. I want to show you one other thing, a website called Huffduffer. And this is like a kind of a social bookmarking site where you can log in and register, and then every time you find an interesting audio file or podcast online, you can, what they call Huffduff it, just by clicking on a button there that you've installed in your browser, and that'll create a record of that. But what's cool is that you can tag it, and then you can create an RSS feed, things with those tags. So I've created a tag CIT COMP6023. So if I'm online and I find an interesting radio program that I think would be useful for people taking this module, I can tag it with that. And if you've subscribed to if you subscribe to the RSS feed for that, then that radio program would automatically turn up on your iPhone or iPod or on your iTunes. The screen I have here is a bit small. I think that's what's happening. But you can sign up to feeds based on tags. Just try that one more time. We should be seeing feeds there. Let me stretch the window. There we go. So you could subscribe in iTunes, and then every time anything I've tagged with CIT COMP6023, that radio program or that segment of a radio program would automatically turn up on your machine or on your phone, which is kind of cool. Okay, any questions on any of that? So what I can help you do in the labs is I can help you sign up to these 2 podcasts anyway in iTunes. Now obviously when you log out of that machine you're going to have to do it yourself at home. iTunes is certainly the easiest way to do it. But you can also do it on your, well, the easiest way I guess is if you have an iPhone is to use the podcast app on the iPhone. And there are also podcast apps on Android. And they even have a directory where you can find these podcasts and subscribe to them. And so that every time there's a new episode then it'll download and you can listen. And the 2 of these I think would be very useful, for example, in helping you work on one of your assignments. One of your assignments is going to be an essay, and a lot of the themes are the kind of things that will be discussed here. Okay? Any questions? Great stuff, so guys. Thanks for your attention.